due to their horrible arguments and disproven Islam, e.g., that Quran says the sun sets in murky water, that I figured I should try to learn from Islam on my own and more objectively, because if that's their best argument, Islam may be pretty sound.
Okay, so recently I saw this video titled "I was an ex-Muslim, the reason I came back to Islam," uploaded by Muslim Convert Stories. And naturally I was intrigued by that, and so I watched it, right? And to put it mildly, as expected, there were some inadequacies in the video, and I want to discuss those today. So let's begin, right?
I was an ex-Muslim for 3 years when I was 13 to 16 years old. I wanted to share the reason I converted and see if any of you have anything to contribute. I had known little about Muhammad, peace be upon him, prior becoming an atheist. Upon leaving Islam, I learned from the ex-Muslims he was basically the worst person to ever exist.
Well, hold on a minute. I'm sure that there are some ex-Muslims who think that Muhammad was just the worst person who ever lived, right? But that's not the ex-Muslim position, right? Most ex-Muslims who critique Islam are not saying that Muhammad was the worst person to ever live. They're merely stating that Muhammad is not as great of a person and not as perfect of a person as most Muslims think him to be. Okay? That's what most ex-Muslims are doing, and even that's not the ex-Muslim position. The ex-Muslim position is simply that Islam is not true. That's it, right? So I'd just like to point that out there. Let's continue.
Well, obviously this wasn't true, and those people just have some bias. I noticed this bias quickly due to their horrible arguments and disproven Islam, e.g., that Quran says the sun sets in murky water. I thought this argument was so terrible when I was only 15 years old and an ex-Muslim that I figured I should try to learn from Islam on my own and more objectively, because if that's their best argument, Islam may be pretty sound.
That is not the best argument that the ex-Muslims have, because the ex-Muslims don't have to have an argument to support their position. Do you know why? Because the ex-Muslims don't hold on to an active position, right? They are simply not convinced by your assertions. So you're telling them that, this religion here, Islam, is true. Then they ask for some kind of evidence. You give them some kind of evidence, what you think is evidence, and they are just not convinced by it, right? That's it. They're not the ones making the assertions. You are. You have to be the one who is providing the evidence. They don't. Okay, for example, I give you a jar filled with marbles, right? I hand it to you and tell you that there are an even number of marbles in this jar. Do you believe me? No. You will ask for some kind of evidence. You'll say, what evidence do you have for that? And I'll give you some kind of shaky evidence that you're not convinced by. And then you say, okay, then I don't believe you. Right? I don't believe your assertion that there are an even number of marbles in this jar. Do you need an argument to justify your non-belief in my assertion that there are an even number of marbles in the jar? No, you don't.
I initially reasoned that Muhammad, peace be upon him, must have either been a liar and conman with ulterior motives, hallucinating and delusional, Udhu billah, or was a prophet of God, just as I would reason Joseph Smith or anyone else would fall into one of these three categories. This is my first inclination. However, I quickly ran into some oddities.
Okay, so in this section he goes on to explain why Muhammad was not a conman or a liar, and I'm going to completely skip over this section. Why? Because I too don't think that Muhammad was a conman or a liar. Why? It's not because I agree with the points that this person is making in this video. It is just that you need pretty damn good evidence to call someone a conman or a liar, right? And I don't have such evidence that proves that Muhammad was a conman or a liar, right? So I don't believe that. I'm not going to make the case that he was. Let's move on.
Really make this first possibility, that he was lying or seeking an ulterior motive, highly unlikely. Maybe he was just hallucinating? Hallucinating or delusions? Delusions and hallucinations are different. A delusion is a false belief, and a hallucination is perceiving that something that is not truly there. E.g., a delusion would be you believing the sun is trying to kill you. A hallucination would be you see the sun inside your bedroom with a knife.
That's actually a pretty good example. Nice.
The two can unfold together but aren't required. My concern with the Prophet hallucinating was fourfold but can be summarized in go listen to Surat Maryam in Arabic with English translation and tell me that's all one hallucination. Many verses in Quran were revealed cogently in response to queries by Muhammad's, peace be upon him, contemporaries. But the most damning example would be Surat Yusuf, which is an apparent replica of the story of Joseph in Judaism. That was a supposedly test of his prophethood. This could not be the product of a hallucination due to its perfect similarity.
Look, I don't know what happened 1400 years ago in Arabia, but I think that a far more likely explanation is that Muhammad simply copied the Bible. Right? That just seems to me to be a far more likely explanation for this perfect similarity that you talk about than there being some kind of cosmic creator who created the cosmos 13.8 billion years ago and then waited about 9.3 billion years to create the earth and then waited another pretty much 4.5 billion years to finally create human beings, and then like about 100,000 years ago, right? And then he just waited for 97,000 years and then just watched human beings kill each other, suffer and die. And then like 3,000 years ago, he says, we must intervene now, right? And he does this in some remote corner of the Middle East. And then like 1600 years later, he makes his final revelation to a random person in Arabia. You know, all of that just seems to me to be far less likely than Muhammad just copying the Bible. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But yeah.
This chapter even makes the correct judgment of calling the king of Egypt a king and not a pharaoh, 12:15, while the Bible fails to make that distinction, Genesis 41:17, and incorrectly refers to the king as Pharaoh.
I'm not even going to check if what you've just said is true. I'm just going to assume that it is. And I'm going to assume that the Bible gets a few things wrong and the Quran gets those very things right. How do I put this bluntly? Being more accurate than the Bible is not an achievement. Okay? The Bible gets a lot of things wrong. And to be more accurate than the Bible, that's not as big of an achievement as you seem to think it is, right? And it is certainly not good enough to prove that you have the word of the cosmic creator, okay? That's not good enough evidence.
The coherence of the Quran in its prose yet poetic-like composition does not align itself with hallucination. The rhythm and meter of the Quran is too well developed to be the product of a hallucination.
Okay, so I'm going to skip over this part. Basically, he says that the Quran is just very beautifully composed. He even says that at the end.
In short, my problems appear to be that the Quran is too beautiful, coherent, and correctly responsive to critics.
See? I'll grant it to you for the sake of the argument. Like, I personally don't believe so, but I'll grant it to you for the sake of the argument that the Quran is beautifully composed. Where does that get you? It gets you nowhere. The fact that a text is beautifully composed is not proof that it comes from the creator of the cosmos. Shakespeare's sonnets are beautifully composed. Do they also come from the creator of the cosmos? No, right? The fact that something is beautifully composed is, again, just not good enough evidence. I'm sorry, it won't do it, right? Like, we could grant that Muhammad was shooting fire out of his mouth and shooting ice out of his hands. That would only leave us like with not knowing how this man managed this, right? And if you could prove that what Muhammad wrote in the Quran was not a product of hallucinations or delusions, that merely leaves us with not knowing how this man managed it, right? That doesn't leave us with believing that the Quran is the literal word from the creator of the cosmos.
Now that's hallucinations. But what if the Prophet was not hallucinating and was just delusional? He would have produced the Quran himself, but would be delusional in believing his production was from God. But this would require Muhammad, peace be upon him, not being aware of his production of the Quran, hallucinating during the production of Quran, or having lied or saying he didn't produce the Quran, but that it was a message from God, despite being fully aware he produced the Quran from his own hands. The first two fail, as the Quran produced without consideration nor thought would not be coherent nor rhythmic, nor would a Quran from hallucination. For the third option, we already discussed why I reject the Prophet being a liar. Due to this deductive reasoning, I came to the conclusion that Muhammad, peace be upon him, must have been inspired by God, and I became a Muslim again at 16.
Okay, maybe I'm missing something, but you just seem to be repeating the points that you've already made, and thus the points that I've already responded to, in reverse order. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know. But, so if I am missing something, please point it out to me. If not the person who uploaded the video, if any one of you who is watching can spot the point that I am missing, please spell it out for me. I'd like to know. At the moment though, I cannot understand what I'm missing, so therefore I'll not address the points that I've already addressed. But I will make this one additional point, which is that this person very cleverly presents three possibilities as though they are the only possibilities, rebukes them one by one, or at least tries to rebuke them one by one, and then says, you see, these possibilities do not hold up. Therefore, Islam is true, therefore there is a cosmic creator, and the cosmic creator wants you to behave this way, and this way, and this way. That's not how it works, right? Even if you could rebuke all of those three possibilities that you presented, that just leaves you with not knowing how Muhammad came up with the Quran. It doesn't leave you with Islam is true. Okay? Okay. So, I've been Aditya Prakash, or Soytheist. If you like what I do, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Soytheist. I'd like to let you know that this video, the topic of this video, was chosen for by my patrons on patreon.com. So if you'd like to do that too, head over there. You can follow me on social media here. If you like the video, leave a like. If you love the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.